Welcome everybody to episode number 3 of our Return to Work series. First, I want to introduce myself. My name's Lisa Hagen. I'm a senior manager in the outsourced HR team. And with me today, I have my good friend and coworker, Jenn McCabe. She's a partner here, as well as our special guest, Britta Satterlund. She's a senior consultant in the HR department as well. And today we're going to talk to you about leaves as they pertain to COVID-19. Okay, so yes, in our previous episodes, the first one, just to remind you, we talked about the recovery tracker. You can get to that on our website, and there's a link for you right there. We can track all kinds of information on here and kind of look at it to see or deduce why the cases might be going up in certain areas. You can drill down to the county level and compare counties if you're looking at multiple locations. And then in the next episode, what we talked about is the way we're using technology to get people back into the workplace. And it goes to the employer to make sure the workplace is ready for people to return. And then what we're showing here is how the employee can demonstrate that they are actually fit to return to the office and healthy. You get a code that shows that you've passed the Fit for Duty test. And if you remember, this goes one step further into an office space planner, and you can make a reservation for your specific desk in the office.
Right. We've had a couple questions since that thing that we did, Lisa. People are wondering how to make it work with their temperature taking that's happening at the front door of their office, and what kind of data they can get. And we're helping people run reports that show who came into the office, whether or not they reported in Fit for Duty, and it is augmenting the temperature taking that's going on, which is sort of, you walk in, you get your temperature taken, but there's no data, there's no amalgamation of the data, whereas this app, the interesting part for people is, number one, it's self-monitored, and that might be enough for a lot of experienced workplace professionals, and then it also provides the company that has the app with the data to show that they complied with local health recommendations. So that's a fun thing.
So also fun is what we're going to talk about today, which is the policies that we have specifically relating to leaves and leave management. And that's where Britta comes in as our subject matter expert. So Britta, can you just describe a little bit to us what those leaves are looking like for different clients and customers?
Sure. So there's two main portions of this leave. There's two official types of leave. One for employers with 1 to 499 employees, called the Families First Coronavirus Act, which is usually abbreviated to FFCRA. And then there is an expansion of regular FMLA for employers of over 500 called EMFLA, which is Emergency Family Medical Leave Act. So for our employers, managing the FFCRA involves a wage replacement, so it can involve a lot more administrative work than the EMFLA, which is administered like regular FMLA, and merely lowers the threshold to ask for it to 30 days of employment, and is otherwise administered the same way FMLA would be administered.
Okay, wait, I got confused. All right. Yeah. So, Britta, when I'm talking to a client and they have less than 500 people, 499 or less is what you said to be exact, that means FFCRA applies. And that was the recent legislation enacted in February, I believe, March at the latest. And that's specifically for COVID-related absences, right? It's COVID, it's got to be COVID-related, is that correct? Of some sort?
Yes, it either has to be COVID-related in the medical sense that you are suspected. There's several different criteria you have to meet if you're caring for someone who has COVID or suspected to have COVID, but it also covers people who merely can't work due to childcare issues due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wouldn't it also apply if I was taking care of my mom and her caregiver could not take care of her because of COVID?
Yes.
Is it family care? Okay. So I have less than 500 employees. I have a COVID-related absence. So that's when FFCRA kicks in.
Correct.
Okay. So let me ask you a dumb question. When you say EFMLA, there's an E in front, just means extra, special. But in normal times, let's pretend it's not 2020 for a second. How many employees do you have when FMLA applies to you?
So normally FMLA kicks in when you have 50 employees. And usually you have to have worked for your employer for generally about a year to 6 months before you qualify to request it. And FMLA is not a wage replacement. It's just a protected leave. And what the EMFLA does is it merely lowers the threshold of employment to 30 days employment.
Got it. So if I work for someone right now, and I've only been there 30 days, I could qualify for this leave, even though I wouldn't qualify for the FMLA leave. And then when you say wage replacement, that's interesting to me. So the FFCRA is a way to replace people's wages who are absent due to COVID, whereas FMLA, which is what we think of as a normal kind of leave, protects your job, meaning that if you take that leave, they hold your job for you, right? That's what you mean?
Correct. The Families First Coronavirus Act has two parts. Part of it is a wage replacement and part of it is job protections. And so they go hand in hand, which means if you're usually an employer who would qualify for FMLA, but you're under 499 employees, you do not qualify, your employees don't qualify for both FFCRA and EMFLA.
Do you get to pick one?
You don't. If you're under 500, you fall under FFCRA.
Okay, so all of a sudden FMLA doesn't really apply when it's a COVID-related absence in particular.
Correct.
Okay, so let's drill down to this, because so much of what's going on and getting back to work and everything that we're talking about right now is really about COVID and what it's done. It's just blown up our world. So, you know, people who are absent from work right now because of FFCRA, you have said, and let me recap, you could be gone from work because you have to take care of a family member. Could be a child, could be a parent. So that's one kind of leave. And then the other kind you talk about has to do with illness. And in that case, it could be the employee is sick or someone in their family is sick that they have to take care of, right?
Correct.
All right. So what's the money here? Talk to me about the money.
All right. Well, it's capped at $200 a day for most of the situations. You get more money for the times when you need to take care of yourself because you're unwell versus childcare issues. And the reason that is because FFCRA actually provides for a longer length of time to continue your childcare qualifying event, basically. The regular part of FFCRA only runs for 12 weeks.
Okay, so if I'm sick, what is the dollars? What's the money?
If you're sick, it's capped at $511 a day, up to $5,110.
So 10 days. So I could be sick for 10 days, $511 a day, $5,110. But then what if it's not me? What if it's someone I'm taking care of who's sick, or I'm taking care of a kid out of school? It's 200. That's what you're saying?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And then now let me take you a step further. So now we know what the money is. It's a $200 a day for, wait, how many days? 10 weeks or something?
So it's up to $2,000 if you are caring for an individual who's subject to quarantine or there's some other situation that requires you to be sheltering in place, but it's not because you've been exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So that for that one, it's $200 a day up to $2,000. So again, that's your 2-week period, same as if you're sick. And then for childcare, it is up to $200 per day and up to $12,000 over a 12-week period.
Okay. So can I get sick for myself, sick for my kid, 10 weeks for my kid of childcare, or is there a cap on the whole shemaggle?
There is a cap on the whole thing. So the maximum that you can get is either basically they're not letting you double dip. You can't ask for both childcare and because you're sick. So you're not going to get $711 per day because your kid both can't go to daycare and you're sick.
Okay. Is there an aggregate amount for me this year if I claim all 3 kinds of leave?
The aggregate is that maximum amount you can get from any of these programs is that $12,000.
Okay. Got it. All right. So
that's the current DOL ruling. They have been updating these changes, and we will let you guys know if for some reason that changes down the road.
Right.
They are rolling out new clarifications literally daily.
Okay. And let's say that I qualify for that leave. I want to keep following the money now. So if I'm a payroll person at a company and I want to put these leaves down in my payroll and track them, what's the process for tracking?
So really this comes down to communication between either the employee and payroll or the manager that the employee is reporting they're sick to and payroll. Because what payroll companies have done is they've created a special earnings code for both the child care and for the self-sick that you apply these wages to. You wouldn't use your usual sick leave wage category, because what they're going to allow you to do is apply the money that you have spent on these leaves against your quarterly tax filings.
So you get it back. So all the money that you spend on an FFCRA leave up to the maximum allowed. So for a moment, let's pretend I make $600 a day and I'm only allowed to claim $511 a day. It's actually 2/3 of my pay. I'm looking at my notes from you wrote a little thing. 2/3 of my pay up to a maximum of $511 a day, right?
Right.
So when the company pays that, they get to get a credit for that. They put in, and I guess it's on the earning code, and you get a credit for everything that you pay that person. So I hear what you're saying. So now, Lisa, if Britta's telling us that we have to track these FFCRA sick leaves separately from the sick leaves that are like normal PTO or sick time, how do you actually differentiate it, and how do you do it in your HR files that you're tracking this?
We've been working with payroll providers to actually set up codes to help us with tracking this.
And how do you document it though? Like if I'm sick and the company's getting a credit, I'm thinking about that. Like if you pay me $511 and I say I'm sick with COVID, what do you have to do to, you set up a separate code, but what is the filing requirement on that in terms of record keeping?
Well, that's an excellent question.
I mean, it's like on our on that RTW tracker, do those questions work? Will they work?
Yes, they will. They absolutely will. And yeah, it's a real sticky situation as to whether you can ask for real, thorough documentation on all of this. But people, I think, will be able to use that app and have the records and the record keeping on there to track people's well-being.
Okay. So you can ask me certain questions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I'm worried about violating someone's HIPAA rights, what I'm thinking about, gals, is if a company's filing for a credit from the government and says, okay, Jennifer McCabe did not just have a cold. Jennifer McCabe had COVID. So her time off is not PTO time off. Her time off is FFCRA, and we're going to go get some money back from the government.
Right.
And so you kind of have to prove that I had COVID somehow without violating my rights to my health privacy. So I know that when we were talking about the RTW tracker the other day, we were talking about how it's already been vetted. It doesn't violate anyone's HIPAA rights. But like, tell me how if I had a sick child, or no, better yet, my child care provider is closed down because of a COVID infection. One of the kids came in. So now I can't work, and I put in for that. How do you document that? So that
in that case, the child care provider would provide a letter, and I'm sure they're being asked to do that a lot.
Okay.
They need to provide a letter or some sort of official document showing that they're closed as a result of COVID-19.
Got it. Okay. So other than asking me if I have a temperature, which clearly you can do if you can stand in front of someone and shoot them with a temperature ray gun,
Right.
you can ask that. And you can also ask for documentation from a child care provider or a family care provider of some
Right.
sort. Okay. All right. That helps a lot. All right. So here's, Britta, now I'm going to back up again. So we've talked a lot about you have less than 500 people. FFCRA, just to summarize it, FFCRA covers sick leave and family leave for the care of yourself or a sick person in your family, or family care for someone in your family. All has to be related to COVID. Lisa's told us how we document that without violating someone's privacy. That's for companies with 499 or less people. So what if you have more than 500 people and you have COVID-related leaves? We really haven't run into this that I know of so far. Is that just EFMLA at that point?
Yes, there's no wage replacement for employers over 500 employees. So it's just a protected leave under the emergency FMLA. The one thing to keep in mind though is if your employee's already exhausted 12 weeks of FMLA, regular FMLA, they don't get an additional 12 weeks of emergency on top of it. They're a combined pool of FMLA.
Got it. So if you have more than 500 staff, you have a sick person or a person who needs a family leave to take care of a sick person, you have to give them protected leave, meaning you save their job for them when they're out. That's what E stands for in that case, right?
Correct. And you
Okay.
can't retaliate against them for asking for the leave, all of the general provisions that the FMLA affords protections for employees.
Got it. And in that case, would you recommend that you also document that it's a COVID leave, or does it not matter because it's kind of the same thing?
It has the same documentation requirements, you know, the name of the employee, how long we think they're going to be out, that they've requested this leave. Just fairly bare bones, but just basic documentation that they asked for the leave effective this date for COVID-related reasons. And you can also ask again for proof that the child care, elder care facility is not available.
Okay, got it. All right, so we have now covered, I'm going to go down to our sign off. So I want to make sure I haven't missed anything, Lisa. We've talked about leave if you have more than 500 people, leave if you have less than 500 people, 500 or more, I mean, 499 or less, and that some of it is wage replacement, meaning that the government gives you money, pays you back if you pay people who are out on COVID-related absences. So that's the government trying to help us stay afloat while we have sick people out. And these leaves are, in fact, coming up now in the second wave, which is very, very interesting that in the last week, we've had several people call. They have, on the West Coast, which is where we see a lot of our work come from, they now have infected employees who are being forced to quarantine, even if they're not sick. So these are happening. And there's a tax credit element. There's a documentation element. There's an employee size element. And I'm trying to think, do I need to say anything about an employer who has 250 employees and what they do? Because they have more than 50, but they have less than 500. Britta, what would you recommend for an employer in that size?
An employer that size, it's still going to follow, if it's a COVID-related item, it's still going to fall under the FFCRA. If it's a non-COVID related request for FMLA, they would just use the regular qualifications for FMLA, that 12-month, 1,250 hours of service. So that would be for a non-COVID, but FMLA qualified. Otherwise, FFCRA for COVID.
And the only overlap then is the fact that you can't take both. It's a 12-week maximum period, end of story for the year. Okay.
Correct.
Got it. All right, Lisa, anything else?
I think that's it. I think that wraps up episode 3 of Returning to Work.
Okay, and our emails are listed on this screen. Again, I'm Jenn McCabe. That was Lisa Hagen, and special guest star, Britta Satterlund. Join us again. We're going to send more content your way as it comes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.